Today's episode of How About We Animate That is brought to you by the Lego Animation Book. All of the characters in today's episode were based on the PaganoPuppet rig, which is this bald person on the cover. You can build your own PaganoPuppet using instructions in this book, so if you don't have a copy, head over to setbump.com/book.
How about we animate that?
Hi, and welcome to How About We Animate That, the series where I bring things to life through stop-motion animation. I'm David Pagano, and on today's Halloween edition of How About We Animate That, I'm going to be animating these. These are PaganoPuppets that were not created by me. A fellow Lego artist on Flickr named Matt Armstrong, also known as monsterbrick, created these PaganoPuppets based on instructions that I had put in an issue of Brick Journal magazine. So there's 6 different characters here. We've got a vampire, some sort of black lagoon-looking creature, a Frankenstein's monster, a witch, a mummy, and a werewolf. And when I saw these, I was like, I would love to animate them. They're super well designed. There's tons of NPU, which is Lego slang for nice parts usage. And fortunately, Matt was nice enough to send these to me, and I should say, he sent them to me 6 years ago. But I am super psyched to finally be able to say, how about we animate that? So I've kept the normal purple background up, and I'm just starting to stage the first character, who's going to be this vampire here. And I'm putting this haunted house that we used in a Max episode in the background just to give it some Halloween feeling. And I've added a few more lights just to kind of make the scene a little bit more spooky looking. You gotta have a light inside the building because that's always fun. Now the only real hitch with animating these characters is going to be that they are based on the PaganoPuppet 2.0 rig. And the way that the waist kind of attached on those was that there's just this pin and it sits into this hole and it doesn't really attach very well. So this is the kind of character I would have used on Country Building around that era. And so for this shot, I've actually built a little stand here for the character to attach to, and the studs on these offset plates are going to sit right into the Technic holes on the bottom of this guy's torso. And what that means is I actually won't end up using these legs, at least for this character. So this is the first How About We Animate That where I know beforehand that I want to cut the animations that I do into a little sequence. So I found this background music. That I think is appropriately Halloween themed. So I'm going to keep that in mind while I'm animating these characters, that my plan is to have the characters' animations cut to this music at the end. So about 15 frames in, this is what I've got with the vampire. He's starting to anticipate a movement where he's going to pull his cape in front of his face in a very classic style. And the reason I started with this character is because it's the closest to what the actual PaganoPuppet is. It's basically just a straight up humanoid. There are only a couple of spots that I think might cause a little trouble. One being the cape, obviously, because it's cloth and I can't control it. I might have to just like tape or blue tack it to his arm. And the other being this chain that's kind of jiggling around a little bit. One of the things I always struggle with is getting big moves to go fast. In this case, the movement is the cape coming around the vampire. But I think this is working, and the nice thing about taking too many frames is that you can always delete some of them later. And I did end up taping the cape to the vampire's arm with just a little piece of Scotch tape. Because this cloth cape is so funky, I've had to use some pieces to just hold it in place. And really all that matters is what the camera sees, so as long as the main shape looks correct, that's all I need. So then I was like, of course the vampire needs to have a smoke plume appear in front of him and then turn into this tiny bat that I built. Because we can't have simple things. Next up is this creature from some sort of dark pond, I suppose. I'm going to have this guy kind of do a, surprise attack to the camera. He's going to be facing directly to camera also. And I don't know, something just popped into my head about an old image that I have of this character. That's kind of how I've been approaching this, just whatever character I have a good idea for is what I do next. I'm using some of these old style hinges to hold the character up, and this was something that I did on Country Building as well. And again, that's kind of a relic of the PaganoPuppet 2.0 era. So the way this is going, it actually looks a little bit more like the creature attacking the camera. So I'm kind of just going with it, and I changed the hinge around so that he's leaning forward now, and he can kind of really get into the camera lens. I really like how these claws look, and I'm trying to highlight them in the shot a bit, so I have the character kind of swiping the camera, but I had to get a very specific angle, so I actually pulled the piece off and moved it over a stud just so that it would exactly hit where I wanted it to. So the next character is this creepy witch, who is not quite the same as the rest of the PaganoPuppet scale designs in terms of her rig, but she's got a really great sort of hunchback look here, and that nose is just wonderful. So I'm gonna have her kind of like use this cane to walk into the scene, and then maybe she'll point at something or otherwise do a witchy gesture. And this blue tack is here to tell me where the end of her main walk should happen. So she's gonna start a little further back and then come forward. So this witch turned out to be a little bit tougher to animate than I thought. I'm not really sure what she's doing right here, but I'm trying to just make it look big and theatrical. And I think if I just continue this move, it should turn into something. I don't know what this is, but I really want to watch this play that the witch is just doing some sort of Shakespearean poses. Next up is Frank here, and I've actually modified this guy a little bit just to have the more modern ball joint connection. It's not quite what it is on the newer PaganoPuppet version 3.0, but it'll do the job. And sadly, these nice looking legs are still over here. But I built this kind of cradle for the body to sit right into. And this is similar to the thing I used on the Zendaya is Michi video. And it's just a way that the torso can kind of like pivot in the way that it would if these were actual hips on legs. Got the end position and the beginning position set up. I really like this sort of halo effect. It makes me feel like I'm working on an old Sesame Street sketch, which is the spirit I strive for. So to make this walk work, I also built a little track that he's just kind of sliding down over the course of the animation. It's weird because I feel like I'm rushing through the walk, but I think the fact that it's kind of weird and lumbering is just what this needs. Testing out this mummy, and I want to do kind of a similar pose to the Frankenstein monster, but instead of having it walk to camera, I'm going to have this hinge kind of bend upwards so that it's like rising out of the crypt. I realized once I had started the animation that the mummy has these kind of bandages hanging off, so I'm trying to animate them in a way that seems somewhat natural and intentional. I also have to call out these skeleton foot fingers because that's a wonderful design choice. And now that I've got the mummy at the height of the lean up, the arms kind of anticipate out this way, and then the mummy will walk off this way. And I've been trying to, again, get the bandages to really kind of follow and have some nice silhouettes to them, so they're kind of dragging behind the mummy. This is what happens when you spend years studying Jim Varney. So for the last of these shots, I've got the werewolf standing at a 3/4 angle. I'm going to try to get the legs into the shot a little bit, even though there won't be any walking because we don't have time for that. But what's going to happen is the head will turn and kind of look this way, and the arms will kind of do a pose, and then I'm going to have the werewolf howl at the just slightly off-screen moon. And I really feel like I have to keep calling out the nice parts that get cut off screen or just aren't that noticed, but these feet are tree trunks from the old Western sets in the 1990s, and There's an arch brick in the back for the werewolf's tail as well, and I've been trying to give that a little bit of animation just to keep the character alive. Alright, so that's the last of the animations of these 6 characters. Let's take a look at the whole thing. Animation is complete, and there's not too much I'm going to say about these characters before we jump right into the final animation. Despite the fact that these are PaganoPuppet 2.0 rigs, the animation went pretty well. I think my favorites are the vampire and the wolfman, but it was super fun to animate these, and I want to thank monsterbrick again, both for sending these to me and for his patience in waiting for me to finally animate them. If you'd like to see more of Matt Armstrong's creations, you can find him on Flickr as monsterbrick. And of course, don't forget that if you'd like to make your own Pagano puppet, you can find building instructions in the LEGO animation book. Head over to setbump.com/book to order one if you don't already have one. As always, you can stay tuned to the Paganimation YouTube channel for more cool stuff. You can support us on Patreon if you like what we do and you want to see some extra behind the scenes things. I'm just going to cut right to the animation. Have a happy Halloween, and we'll see you next time for another How About We Animate That?